The fire service is a lifestyle. Some of us grew up knowing that this is what we would do. Others found it later in life. We all have a story to tell. We live a career of experience and knowledge. But what happens when we retire? All that knowledge and experience walks out the door. Welcome to Capture the Knowledge. Hello Metro Fire, Jeff Malinowski. We're back with more Capture the Knowledge. Wanted to welcome you to a very special edition of Capture the Knowledge where we're going to be talking with Scott Schnieder. Scott was an engineer for Metro, and you retired out in
August 25th, 2016.
2016.
Yeah.
Okay. And Scott Schnieder is now running the Del Campo High School ROP program.
Yeah, we call it CTE now. It's the
CTE.
same thing. It's just
Okay.
just like anything else. The name changes, but it stays the same.
Okay.
So.
Great. So I wanted to thank you for taking the time to meet with me today.
My pleasure.
Jason Cahill are very happy to be here with you in this beautiful place that you've
Thank you.
done a ton of work in, obviously.
Yeah, it's brand new.
Yeah, and it's great. It's a great thing for all these students. So Scott, let's talk about your career in the fire service, how it started, and let's just work up to where you are right now.
Okay. Little background. I'm one of those kind of crazy examples where I was influenced by TV. When I was young, the show Emergency was on TV. I loved that show. As a result, I had my birthday at a fire station, and I left that birthday and I told my parents I want to drive the fire truck. And really, that's what I stuck with that my entire career. You know, every kid says, oh, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a race car driver, etc. Some people want to be a firefighter. Yep. For me, I was very, very fortunate in that I get to live my dream for basically 16 years. So that's kind of what started it off for me. You know, at that birthday party, I got a little plastic helmet and SCBA, and I wore it everywhere. I got my picture taken there at the firehouse, and like I said, I just couldn't think about anything else. My parents kind of had other plans for me. My parents wanted me to go to medical school. I was kind of headed that direction, and kind of pulled the crazy eye at the last minute, and I just said, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to be a firefighter. Yeah. So, you know, I did like most people did. I took a couple fire science classes and kind of confirmed in my mind, yeah, this is what I want to do. I went and took an EMT class at AR, and then took the paramedic class at ARC. Yeah. And I was very fortunate. I got some ride time at 62, where I met Bob Bruce and Joel Kaufman and some of the other guys there, and they allowed me to come back repeatedly for some additional ride time, more than my required ride time. And really, that was my launching point. I mean, the guys were so great. I loved the job so much. It's just, I couldn't imagine doing anything else, and it really just kind of solidified things in my mind that this is exactly what I wanted to do. After that, like I said, I went to the academy, class 04-1. I was very lucky. I got to start off my career at 62. Spent a number of years at 62, did a lot of B-14, a lot of B-9, and then I retired out of Truck 50 A shift. That was my last assignment before I got sick and ended up ultimately getting medically retired.
So you started off with Joel Kaufman and Bob Bruce. I hear those names.
I did. They were quite an influence on me, and you know, really, I felt super welcome. Of course, I was very, very fortunate because I had Captain Bruce as the guy who offered me additional ride time as a young prospective firefighter. As an EMT student, he offered me additional ride time. Joel was already there, and we had Castile there. It was just a great group of guys, and you know, I felt like family right away. You know, and that's, of course, one of the things that really appealed to me. Through my entire fire career, and still today, I have a second family, which I'm super fortunate about. I love that. It's actually one of the things I miss most about being retired. You know, it's funny, I always get a little chuckle out of the guys who would have like 12 stickers on the back of their truck, you know, the firefighter plate, the firefighter frame, all the stickers and all the stuff. And I thought, I love firefighting. It is my job. It's a big part of my life, but I don't want to let it define me. You know what I mean? I'm Scott first, who also happens to work for the fire department. And I didn't realize until I left how big of a part of my life it really was until I lost it. Of course, because I was medically retired, I didn't get to go on my terms. I didn't get to do my full 30 years. So I felt robbed. Not robbed by the department, just robbed in general because I felt, like I said, my career got cut short, not at my choosing. It didn't end on my terms, and so I regretted that. It's an unfortunate set of circumstances to which no one has any control, or over which no one has any control. But that's what happened, and that's what it is. But what I miss most, of course, is the family, and I got so much support when I was sick and felt so loved and supported, and like I said, like a family member. And then you leave the department, and even though the crews never made me feel this way, I felt sort of persona non grata. I hadn't done my full 30 years. I had left early. No one made me feel that way. I felt that way about myself. People were very welcoming and warm when I went by the stations and stuff like that. But the problem was on my side. I felt out of place. I no longer worked for the fire department, and as time went on, there were more and more new faces, and so I would go to a fire station. It's not like I would recognize the entire crew. I wouldn't recognize anyone.
Right.
So then,
Right.
So it was hard, which is partly why I took this job, is because I wanted to stay involved. I wanted to continue to give back. I didn't feel like I was done. It's not directly in the fire service. I'm not going on calls anymore, but I feel I can still have an influence on the next 30 years, the next generation of firefighters,
Absolutely.
which is far going to outreach my personal contribution. I had had another 15 years to go, and that would have been the end of me. This way, for the next 30 years, I can influence the fire department and hopefully, help some kids out in the process.
Well, and then maybe you'll be one of the Bob Bruces or Joel Kaufmans for all the students in these classes here.
Maybe.
Where they can look back and say, Scott Schnieder got me started, or he taught me how to do this. Very early mentor.
Maybe. I'd like to pay it back. Bob and other firefighters had a huge influence on me, huge impact on me. And I would like to think that I can give that back to someone else.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about mentoring with you a little bit later, but before we get to that, would you be okay kind of talking about your experience when you separated from the fire service,
Sure.
how you got sick and all that?
Yeah.
As a tool for all of us to learn from in terms of, God forbid anybody has to deal with it, but I think we all know that the reality is that it's out there.
Yeah, it was kind of strange how it happened. Some of the guys may remember I was working at 109 at the time, and I had what looked like herpes on my lip. My lip was all swollen, inflamed, and irritated. I vividly remember I showed up on 4th of July. I was assigned to work, and I showed up, and I got about 50 feet from the back of the station, and Adam House looked at me, and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I go, "Hey, it's 4th of July. I'm not going to call in sick on 4th of July. I'm not going to be that guy." He goes, "You got to get out of here. Look at your face. It was open and bleeding and stuff like that." And I said, "Well, I know, but it's my assigned shift, And he goes, "No, you got to go home." And so went home. Of course, I sought treatment for it, and they said, "Oh, it's just like maybe a bad sunburn or maybe like a little bit of skin cancer." And so they gave me some topical cream and stuff like that, and it peeled the layer off and just came back and back and back. I was working at 50 at the time. We were sitting down for dinner, and it was kind of funny because I remember it very vividly. I was having dinner, and I felt something kind of on my lower lip here. Felt like maybe food or something was caught in my lower lip, and so I was kind of feeling around, and I felt like about a pea-sized lump on the inside of my inside of my lip here. And so I felt it, and I thought, "Oh, that's kind of strange. I wonder what that is." So, of course, typical firefighter fashion, or maybe male fashion, I didn't do anything about it for a while.
Right.
Just let it ride. And then it started to hurt. And so I went and saw a doctor. Actually, I saw a series of doctors. I saw my primary care doctor, who had no idea, referred me. Saw another doctor who had no idea, referred me to another specialist. Went and saw that person. He said, "Oh, it's just a sebaceous cyst," which is just like a fatty cyst. He said, "No problem, we'll cut it out, you're good to go." So he cut it out and said, "Nope, you're all done, you're going to be perfect from now on." But he did take it upon himself, and I'm glad he did, to send it off to histology to have them look at it. And he called me a couple of days later and said, "Yeah, it's cancer. It's a pretty aggressive form. It's called squamous cell carcinoma of the buccal mucosa. Basically cancer." He said, "Well, no problem." He goes, "We'll cut out a third of your lower lip," which is why my lip droops down like this. Cut out a third of my lower lip. Removed it. At the end of the surgery, he said, "Hey, you're great." He goes, "The margins were clear. We got it all out. You're good to go. You're done." All right, perfect. Well, then I went back to, I was recovered. I went back to work. Was on the job for maybe about another 4 months or so. Same time, I guess dinner time's the time. I felt a large lump down here in my jaw. And I thought, well, I don't know what that is, but it's not cancer because they just told me they got all the cancer. It can't be the cancer. It's got to be something else, something silly. I went back to the doctor and they did a scan and he goes, yeah, the cancer's back. And it's much larger this time because before it was about the size of a pea. This time it was about the size of a quarter around. They had found that it had gotten in my nerve and had eroded. There's a hole in your jaw where the nerve runs through and it eroded that away. And so they needed pretty extensive surgery. It turned out to, I think, be 14 hours long. They actually cut my neck here and pulled the skin over my face, like face off. And they removed half of my jaw. Of course, removed all the cancer, and they traced the nerve up to the base of my skull. They went up as far as they could because their concern is once it gets in your nerve, it's always in your nerve. They said it can actually jump locations. So they did that. Felt that the surgery was pretty successful. It was kind of a miserable surgery because my mouth was really swollen, and they damaged my nose doing a nasal intubation on me, and it was kind of a hassle, but. Got that taken care of, worked through that, and then I had a massive immune response, partly in response to the cancer, and I ended up with a thing called Guillain-Barré. So the Guillain-Barré attacks the myelin sheath surrounding the nerve, and it left me paralyzed from the neck down for about 9 months. At that same time, that massive immune response also attacked my kidneys and destroyed my kidneys, and then I was on dialysis as well at the same time for about 5 years. The myelin sheath slowly started to repair itself, and I learned to walk again and stuff like that, and once again, typical fashion. Once I started to stand and walk again, I said, well, if I get back to jogging, maybe 6 months or so, I can get back to work. Sure. You know, so I kind of started my own kind of mental treatment plan of how I was going to get back to work. But unfortunately, I didn't have a full recovery in terms of my nerve renewal, regeneration, whatever you want to call it. And I still can't feel my feet. It affects my balance and strength and stuff like that. And I was still kind of in denial, but I pretty much understood that I wasn't going to be going back to work. That combined with the fact that I was on dialysis really kind of, sealed my fate, so to speak. So I was finally retired, like I said, August 25th, 2016. And I was retired for a few months and was bored. Had to get back to work. So I ended up taking several jobs. I was teaching EVOC with Kelly Tassoni. I took a job teaching at American River College, paramedicine, and then subsequently I took this job here at Del Campo.
Thank you for sharing that story. Absolutely. Because I think it's a huge one for all of us to hear, and it really lends credence to why we need to be doing everything, masking up, and doing the best that we can to keep our gear clean, all the things that we're working towards now.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, and not that I'm that old, but our generation, your generation, Jason's generation, there was a certain amount, I know it sounds juvenile and silly, but it's kind of cool. You want to be the salty guy. You didn't want to be the brand new guy, especially as a brand new guy. You don't want to look it. You want to look like, hey man, I've been there, done that. And so we'd leave our turnouts dirty. We'd drag them around in our cars, stuff like that. We weren't aggressive in cleaning our turnouts like we should have been. And of course, I deeply regret that decision. So I think that, and I hope that the fire department will continue to progress in this whole idea of keeping the turnouts clean. I know they've been doing the fire wipes, and I know some departments are even doing saunas after the fires to get that stuff out of their pores and stuff like that. I think, we can't do enough. I think as a young male firefighter, I took for granted that, I don't know, nothing's going to hurt me, and I think I never even considered the fact that I was going to get cancer and going to retire early and stuff. It was just not on my radar. Now I think back and I think, geez, how short-sighted it was of me that I didn't even consider that as an option. But I think that for a lot of people, that's what it takes. You don't think it can happen to you or it's going to happen to you. And then even after Pete got sick and stuff, I still didn't make the connection. I should have. I mean, that's it was direct evidence, but I still just didn't make the connection. I wish I had it earlier. So I would encourage anyone, especially young guys, you got a long career ahead of you, keep your stuff clean, keep it out of your car, keep it as contained as possible. I mean, anything you can to mitigate that risk, because I can tell you firsthand, laying paralyzed in a bed at 3 a.m., I thought to myself, I could have perhaps prevented this, and this is a bad place to be. So.
And we want to do whatever we can, and who knows if it could have been prevented or not. But we want to do what we can.
Absolutely. Well, and the other thing is, you know, like I said, I would carry that stuff around in my car with my kids. You know, I mean, I think I would never do that, but it was just what we did. Hey, I'm working a different station tomorrow, throw it in the back of the car. Well, I got to drag the kids somewhere, so we drag the kids back in there. You know, it'd be hot in the car. It's Sacramento summertime. You could smell them, so that should have been a good indicator that, you know, it's not a good thing to do. But we just, I don't know. I don't want to assume what other people are thinking, but I just never really entered my mind. It's just what we did, you know. So I think we just need to be more conscientious, more aware, and just think. Just think. You don't want your jaw cut out. You don't want to be paralyzed. You don't want to be on dialysis. You don't want any of that stuff, right? Right. So if I could prevent it going back, I absolutely would. And like I said, there's no way to know. There's no way to know. Yeah. But that is the kind of the leading theory from the doctors, is that's what caused it.
We talked about back. Now moving forward.
Sure.
Scott Schnieder's character and spirit.
Yeah.
You got bored.
I did.
And we all know Scott Schnieder, this beautiful engine behind us was not a beautiful engine when you got it, but we know Scott Schnieder spent a lot of time. Everything you've done here looks very professional.
Thank you.
Tell us about what you're doing here at Del Campo.
2015 or so, about a year before I retired. And I wasn't there for this, but I was told that Chief Randy Hine, who was then AC of EMS, Grant Gould, and as to represent American River College Paramedic Program, and then my CTE director, my boss at the school here, Brett Wolf, got together and they said, hey, we need a ROP or CTE program for fire tech. And we knew it was out there that we weren't getting the kind of response we used to get for applications and stuff. I mean, when I got hired, I'm sure the same is true when you got hired. There were over 3,000 people who tested. So. You know, just in facing that decline and trouble staffing and stuff like that, we said, hey, we need a transition program. And that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted a transition. We wanted the students to go into this program, transition directly into American River's EMT paramedic program or another program, and then directly into Metro Fire. I mean, that was the impetus for starting the whole program. And so that's what we've tried to do. We started the program here. It was kind of a rough start. When I first started, like I said, you know, I started 5 days before school started. Yep. Said, okay, show me to your equipment, your training facility, and there wasn't either. There was neither. There was nothing. There was no training program. There was no classroom. There was no textbook. There was no hose, nozzle, ladder, equipment. Definitely not a fire engine. Mm-hmm. There were no turnouts. So, you know, we had a steep hill to climb, especially in the beginning. I told my seat director, I said, you know, this is going to be expensive. And, you know, the school budget is limited. So we knew it was going to be tough, but we got a lot of grants. My CTE boss worked really hard to get some grants. We got some generous donations from Metro Fire. We got all their fire gear turnouts. Mm-hmm. Just together, we put this program together, really from nothing, from the ground up. And the idea here is I want to, in addition to other things, I really want when the students show up to class, them to feel like they're showing up at the firehouse. That was the intention. Of course, that's tough for a school because a school thinks like a school, right? They mm-hmm. think desks and classrooms, and they don't think fire engines and hose and hydrants and stuff like that. So, you know, I really had to work closely with school administration to say, you know, you're thinking of this as a school. We need to think about more as a fire department. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what we've tried to do here. We're very, very, very fortunate, and the school just spent a tremendous amount of money building this new facility. They've taken a lot of advice from myself as other consultants and stuff like that in designing the facility. We did have some limitations. It wasn't that, you know, we had to use these 4 walls basically, but we had to modify them to work for our purpose. But we tried to do the best we can to get the engine inside, some training ground areas, some storage areas, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But like I said, this is just a totally foreign concept to the school. Mm-hmm. The goal for the students is that they're going to get both fire and EMS experience. It's supposed to basically overlap the two. So the school is, the class is fire tech / EMR. Mm-hmm. So when I met with Dr. Gould, we discussed this. I said, hey, what are your goals for the students? What are your expectations? What do you expect my students to look like when they come out of the program? Mm-hmm. And his request was that he wanted them to be able to sit down and pass a National Registry EMR exam. So that was the EMS goal for this. And then I wanted to give them, of course, as much exposure to the basics of firefighting. You know, and then, of course, there's a lot of foundational knowledge. We have state curriculum that we have to meet certain standards, and a lot of that is background stuff, you know, like fire department organizations and command and control and building construction. So all the core, 6 main core components, so we have to address those. But I also want to give them as much of a chance to experience sort of what it's like to be a firefighter. So, you know, I want them to do 60-second standard for turnouts, and I want them to do a 60-second standard for SCBA, and I want them to do an SCBA confidence course, and I want them to handle hose lines and stuff like that. Now, we have to manage our expectations. These are still high school students. We can't put the same curriculum demands that we would in an academy on these students, but I want to give them that experience. So they're going to have basically a familiarity with all these things, but they aren't going to be proficient in all these things. There's not enough hours. There's not enough hours in this program to expect my student to be proficient in, for example, setting up a rigging system. Okay, that's not realistic. But at least they're going to recognize it. It's going to be familiar to them. Hey, that's a Stokes basket. That's how we lash a patient in. Hey, that's a 2.5. That's an 1 3/4 hose. That's a smooth bore nozzle. That's a fog nozzle. Stuff like that.
But what a wonderful foundation for these students.
And that's actually really, to be very honest, that's actually my #1 goal. A lot of these kids don't have a great mentor, lack of leadership. They come from rough backgrounds. We come from very diverse backgrounds. We have a lot of English as a second language students. We have a lot of refugees. We have a lot of people with limited socioeconomic means. We just have a great diversity here. And a lot of times what the students need, almost more than anything, is just learning to be good, honest, hardworking, committed, dedicated, focused young men and women. And that's really kind of the foundation. I believe, and I know that in the academy, they're going to learn how to pull a hose, to tie a knot, to take a blood pressure, right? I know that that's coming for them, and I know that they're going to get that if they choose to pursue this. But they're not even going to get there if they make mistakes before they have an opportunity to get there. And so really, that's my main focus, and I spend a lot of time on that. The whole like team building, honesty, integrity, strength, courage, all these kind of things that to a lot of these students are somewhat foreign concepts. They don't get it at home for whatever reason, okay? And so like I said, that's a big part of our focus. It takes a lot of our time, and I struggle with that. Hey, we're spending time on this. We need to be spending time on pulling hose, but I go back to the order of things, and I say to myself, first they need to be good young men and women, then we'll teach them the skills.
And that circles back around to the mentoring that we started this whole thing off with.
Sure.
You talk about Joel Kaufman.
Absolutely.
And you talk about Bob Bruce a bunch.
Absolutely.
And you talk about how they made you feel and how excited they made you about the career.
Right.
And how they helped take some young excitement and ambition and kind of focus it in.
Absolutely.
Let's go here with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, like I said, that's a struggle for us. That's a big struggle for us. And you know, they're young. Yeah. We initially were not going to allow freshmen to take this class. We said, hey, we want more mature students in this class. This is for juniors and seniors. We've opened it up to freshmen because we feel we need to capture, in this day and age, we need to capture people younger, right? Unfortunately, even as freshmen and sophomores and stuff, we want to catch them before they make those mistakes, and we want to focus them. Yeah. And you know, there's even been talk of trying to capture them in junior high, because some of my students make big mistakes even in junior high. Yeah. And so we want to get them younger and younger. And it takes time. But I've been very, very fortunate. I mean, that's some of the most rewarding experiences I've had teaching. I have a couple of students who are in the hiring process with Metro right now. I've had a couple other students get hired for CAL FIRE, another one for Bozeman, Montana. And so I'd love to see that, but what I kind of love even more is having parents approach me and saying, very early on, it was about I think it was my first year in teaching, and like I said, we had a tough hill to climb. We didn't have any equipment, we didn't have anything, and I was feeling pretty down about the whole thing. Like, why am I doing this? You know, this is just too much. And I was feeling pretty down about it. And just at the right time, I was picking up for the night. I was spending 12, 16 hours a day here just because I would teach during the day, and then at night, I would get proposals, I would do paperwork, I would do logistics things, I would fix saws, I would do all the behind the scenes stuff, and I would, like I said, I'd have 12 and 16-hour days. I was leaving one night about 6 or 7 o'clock at night and had a baseball game going, and I had a gentleman come up to me, didn't really introduce himself, just came up, he goes, "Are you Mr. Schnieder?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." He goes, "I really want to shake your hand." So he reached out his hand, I shook his hand, and I was still kind of lost, like, I don't know who you are, I don't know what you're shaking my hand and thanking me for. So he goes, "My son is in one of your classes," and he said, "You know, it's been rough." He said, "You know, he doesn't have a whole lot good to say about anything or anyone." And he said, "But he has a lot good to say about you." And I said, "Oh, wow, thank you very much." But he said, "I want to thank you because," he said, "we've seen a huge change in this, my son." I'll leave his name out of it. Seen a huge change in my son. He's just more focused, more committed, more respectful, has a passion now. And he goes, I want to thank you because it's changed my household. So, and the timing couldn't have been better because, like I said, I was, you know, I was retired. I'm getting income. You know, I didn't really have to be here. And I was thinking, why am I doing this? And I was very naive when I took the job. I really thought, I reflected back on when I was a young kid and wanted to do this. I was so eager I'd have done anything. I mean, just ask. And I kind of thought I was going to be walking into a class of 75 of those kids. Instead, like I said, I was very naive. Most of the students were placed there by a counselor, had no desire to do this, just thought it sounded like an easy class. Were struggling academically in other classes, so thought fire tech was the way to go. And as you and I know, you know, this is the kind of program, this is the kind of career where you need buy-in, you need to care. You know, it's not showing up and punching a clock at a bank or something like that. You know, I try to project my passion for it, and I think they feel it. The other thing we talk about, one of the very first things that we talk about before we really even get in curriculum, I say, what do you think it takes to be, I ask them a couple of different ways. What do you think it takes to be a good firefighter? And then I say, as a person calling 911, what do you want to see in the person who's responding to help you? And then we come up with some adjectives that describe that person, and then I ask them, you know, which of these do you think apply to you, and which ones can you build on, stuff like that. So that's really how we started off. So, and you know, I know statistically speaking, I have 75 students this semester. I know statistically speaking, 75 are not going to be firefighters. So I really do it for the 1 or 2 or 3 a semester that actually do want to do it. But the other thing I've really found, which is very exciting to me, is I have a large percentage, even at this point, that come in the first day and they said, "Yeah, I didn't really want to be here, counselor stuck me here, whatever." But then they learn to love it. And I love that too. And that's also why I don't want to discourage people, because, you know, the suggestion has been, well, if they don't want to take the class, just get them out. But then there's that middle group that don't know or don't think they want to be here in the beginning. They get into it and they love it. And I've had several people who've said, "You know what? Yeah, I didn't want to be here in the beginning. I want to sign up again. I'm thinking about heading this direction." And I love that too, because you know, I helped a young person basically figure out their life's direction, which I think is huge. So I think it's scary for a lot of people because they're young. They're, I don't know, 14 or 15. They have no idea what they want to do with their lives. And to say, "Hey, you know, this is an option for you," and then go have them say, "Yeah, this is fantastic." So it's huge. So it's those small wins. That's what really keeps me going.
So Scott Schnieder, thanks for meeting with me on Capture the Knowledge.
Thank you.